Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling a condition called acute acquired committant esotropia.
AACE.
Yeah, ACE for short.
That's it.
Have you ever felt your eyes suddenly crossing and you start seeing double?
Yeah.
That's basically the core of ACE.
Yeah.
And we're going to break down exactly why it happens, how doctors diagnose it, and what you can do about it.
Right.
But what I think is really fascinating about this is that there seems to be a connection between ACE and, all of our screens in our modern lives.
It's true. We're seeing it more and more these days, and there's some thought that, just the rise of screens and near work might be playing a role in that.
Okay, so before we get into all that, I think we need to define what exactly ACE is. How is it different from other eye conditions?
So ACE has a few key characteristics. First of all, it's all about the sudden onset.
Yeah.
So this isn't something that people have had since childhood. It just kind of appears seemingly out of the blue. Second, the eye turn, or the angle at which the eye is crossed, it stays the same no matter where you look. So imagine drawing a line from your eyes to what you're focusing on. With AC, that line stays at the same angle.
Okay.
And lastly, the muscles themselves are fine.
Okay.
It's the coordination between them that goes awry.
So it's not a muscle problem. It's more
Yeah.
of a brain signal issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that's where the whole screen time and near work connection might come into play. When you're focusing on something up close, like your phone or your computer, your eyes naturally converge, meaning they turn slightly inward. But doing this for hours on end can, tire those muscles and disrupt their usual harmony. It's like they forget how to relax and work together properly.
That makes sense. Is it just screens, though? Or can other things cause this kind of eye strain, too?
Any kind of near work can contribute to it, whether it's reading, writing, or even crafts. It's all about moderation and making sure that your eyes get a break from that constant inward focus.
Yeah, this reminds me of a patient I saw recently. She was a young woman, a graphic designer, and she spent hours every day staring at a computer screen.
Yeah.
And one morning she woke up and her world was literally doubled.
Wow.
She was terrified. She thought she had a brain tumor or something.
Right.
But it turned out it was AACE, and it was likely triggered by just her, very intense work habits.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah, it must have been really scary for her. So in her case, it seems like the near work was the main culprit.
Yeah.
But are there other things that can cause AAC?
Absolutely. There's several potential causes.
Okay.
One of the most common is uncorrected farsightedness or hyperopia.
Okay.
If you're farsighted, your eyes have to work extra hard to focus on things up close, and that constant strain can sometimes trigger AAC.
So even if someone isn't glued to a screen all day,
Yeah.
their vision itself could be a factor.
Exactly. It's like the eyes are already working overtime,
Right.
and then something just kind of pushes them over the edge.
Gotcha.
And sometimes it's not even farsightedness, but a pre-existing tendency for the eyes to turn inward. We call that esophoria.
Okay.
So it's like the eyes were always on the verge of crossing,
Uh-huh.
and then something tipped the scales.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it seems like ACE can come from all kinds of different sources. Some are related to our vision. Others are related to external factors.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that's right?
You're on the right track. Even stress, both physical and psychological, can play a role.
Stress.
Oh, yeah. When you're stressed, your body tenses up, and that tension can affect the muscles in your eyes, too, potentially disrupting their alignment.
Oh, wow. It's amazing how interconnected our bodies are.
They really are.
Stress can really manifest in unexpected ways.
It sure can.
Are there any other potential causes we should be aware of?
Well, there's one more we should mention, although it is less common. In some cases, ADC can actually be a sign of an underlying neurological condition.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's why it's so important to see a doctor if you experience a sudden double vision or eye crossing. They'll want to do a thorough exam to rule out anything serious.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've talked about near work, vision problems, stress, and even potential neurological issues.
Right.
Is there a way to categorize these different causes?
There is. A common classification system divides AACE into three main types.
Okay.
The first type, which is often called the swan type, happens when something disrupts our binocular vision. That's basically how our two eyes work together to create a single 3D image.
Right.
This could be something as simple as patching one eye, which forces the other eye to take over,
Okay.
or even sudden vision loss in one eye.
So if the brain isn't getting, like, consistent input from both eyes,
Yeah,
kind of throws off the coordination.
precisely. Now, the second type is known as the Burian-Franchischetti type. And this one's often linked to mild farsightedness and sometimes occurs after illness or emotional trauma. It's like the body has gone through a stressful event
Okay.
and the eyes react by crossing.
It's fascinating how our physical and emotional well-being are so intertwined.
Absolutely.
What about the third type?
The third type is called the Bielszowski type, and it typically affects people with nearsightedness. In this case, double vision is more prominent when looking at things far away. And remember what we discussed about excessive near work?
Huh.
Well, that can also play a role in this type, particularly if the nearsightedness isn't corrected with glasses.
So even though nearsightedness makes it easier to see things up close,
Yeah.
it can still contribute to AA in some cases.
Exactly. It all comes down to balance and making sure your eyes get the right kind of stimulation and rest.
Okay, so we've covered the potential causes and the different types of AACE.
Yeah.
But what does it actually feel like to have this condition? Like, what would someone experiencing ACE notice?
The most common and often the most alarming symptom is the sudden onset of double vision, which is also called diplopia.
Okay.
So imagine waking up one morning and you're suddenly seeing two of everything.
I can only imagine how disorienting that would be. What else might someone experience?
Well, besides the double vision, they would probably see one of their eyes turning inward.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be a fleeting thing. It would be
For-
persistent. They might also experience eye strain and fatigue, especially when they're trying to focus.
Okay.
And some people even start tilting or turning their head to try and compensate for the double vision.
So it's not just about seeing double, it's like it can affect your whole way of being in the world.
It really can impact someone's daily life,
Yeah.
from simple tasks like reading to more complex activities that require precise visual coordination.
This is all really helpful information.
It,
Now, I know we're about to wrap up this part of the deep dive, but before we do, could you give us a little preview of what's coming up next? What will we be exploring in part 2?
in part 2, we'll shift our focus to diagnosis and treatment.
Okay.
We'll discuss what happens during a comprehensive eye exam, the different tests used to diagnose ACE, and the various treatment options that are available, from glasses and prisms to Botox injections and surgery.
Wow. It sounds like there's a lot to cover. I'm looking forward to learning more about how AAC is managed and what people can do to get their vision back on track.
It's going to be a fascinating discussion. Make sure you join us for part 2 to learn more about the path to recovery from ACE.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to our deep dive into acute acquired commitment esotropia.
In the last part, we really got into, like what ACE is,
Yeah.
what causes it, and even how it's categorized.
Right.
But now I think it's time to talk about what happens when someone's actually experiencing those symptoms.
Okay.
Like, what's the next step?
Well, if you're suddenly seeing double or you notice an eye turning inward, the most important thing is to see an eye doctor.
Right. Right away. Early diagnosis and treatment are really key to preventing any long-term complications.
That makes sense, but what exactly does a doctor do to figure out if it's AACE?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just like a simple eye chart test?
It's a little bit more involved than that.
Okay.
A thorough eye exam is the first step.
Okay.
The doctor's going to start by taking a detailed history, asking about your symptoms, when they started, any recent stressors that you've been experiencing, and your overall eye health history.
So it's like a detective trying to piece together the clues.
Exactly. They're trying to build a complete picture of what's going on.
Gotcha.
Then comes the actual eye exam.
Okay.
They'll check your visual acuity, or how well you see,
Okay.
in each eye, both with and without special eye drops.
Hold on. Eye drops? What are those for?
Those drops temporarily relax your focusing muscles,
Oh, okay.
which allows us to get a more accurate measurement of your eye's focusing power.
Gotcha.
It helps us figure out if you need glasses and what prescription would be best. I see. So it's more than just like checking if you can read the letters on the chart.
Right.
Yeah.
We also need to assess how well your eyes work together.
Okay.
There are specific alignment tests that measure the angle of the eye turn at different distances, both with and without glasses.
And I remember you mentioned in the last part that sometimes neurological issues can be a factor in ACE.
Right.
So I imagine the doctor would want to rule that out too.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
They'll perform a neurological examination to check your reflexes, your eye movements, and your overall neurological function.
Okay.
And in some cases, They might even recommend imaging, like a brain scan, if they suspect a more complex cause.
Wow, sounds like a very thorough process.
It is.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we're considering all the possibilities and making the most accurate
All
diagnosis
right.
so we can create the best treatment plan for each individual.
Speaking of treatment, what are the options for someone diagnosed with ACE? Is surgery always necessary?
Not at all.
Okay, good.
There's a range of approaches, and the best one really depends on the underlying cause and the severity of the AACE.
Okay.
Sometimes, something as simple as a new pair of glasses can make a big difference, especially if farsightedness is contributing to the problem.
So in some cases, it's like a pretty straightforward fix.
It can be,
Okay.
and if glasses alone aren't enough, we might suggest prisms.
Prism.
Yeah, think of prisms like tiny wedges in your glasses that bend the light,
Okay.
helping your eyes see a single image instead of two.
That's a great analogy. So they're kind of like giving the eyes a little nudge in the right direction.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, in cases where one eye is weaker than the other, a condition called amblyopia or lazy eye,
Mm-hmm.
we might recommend eye patching.
Okay.
This involves covering the stronger eye for a certain amount of time each day to force the weaker eye to work harder and improve its vision.
So it's like giving that weaker eye a chance to catch up, get stronger.
Exactly.
Okay.
We also have something called botulinum toxin injections.
Botulinum toxin.
Yeah, you might know it better as a Botox.
Wait, Botox? I thought that was just for wrinkles.
Botox has many uses, and one of them is to temporarily weaken overactive eye muscles.
Oh.
So at ADE, we can use it to relax the muscle that's pulling the eye inward,
Okay.
allowing the other muscles to work more effectively.
So it's like rebalancing the muscle forces?
Exactly.
But you mentioned it's temporary, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The effects typically last for a few months.
Yeah.
And then the treatment might need to be repeated.
I see. So what happens if none of these treatments work? Is that when surgery is considered?
Surgery is typically reserved for cases where conservative treatments haven't been effective or when the AACE is very severe.
Okay.
The goal of strabismus surgery is to adjust the position or strength of the eye muscles to improve alignment
Okay.
and hopefully restore binocular vision.
It sounds like a pretty big deal. What's the recovery like?
Most people can go home the same day,
Oh, wow.
but there will be some restrictions on activities for a few weeks while the eyes heal.
Oh.
There might be some redness, swelling, and sensitivity to light,
Sure.
but most people recover well
Yeah.
and experience significant improvement in their vision.
It's reassuring to know that there are options available,
Yes.
even in more complex cases. But I'm curious, even with all these advancements in treatment, AACE can still be a pretty scary experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Suddenly losing clear single vision can be incredibly frightening and disorienting.
Right.
People might worry about their appearance, their ability to work or drive, and the overall impact on their daily lives.
So it's not just the physical symptoms that need to be addressed,
Right.
but the emotional and psychological impact as well.
Exactly. It's important for people with AACE to know that they're not alone
Yeah.
and that there are resources and support systems available to help them cope with the emotional challenges of this condition.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
It's a reminder that healing involves more than just treating the physical symptoms.
exactly. It's about addressing the whole person. We need to ensure that people feel supported, informed, and empowered throughout their journey with ACE.
I'm glad we touched on that.
You too.
It's an important aspect that's often overlooked. Now, I know we're moving on to part 3 of our deep dive, but before we do, could you give us a little sneak peek at what's coming up next?
In part 3, we're going to explore the bigger picture of ACE.
Okay.
We'll discuss its increasing prevalence in our digital age,
Gotcha.
what we can do to protect our eye health, and some of the broader implications for our relationship with technology.
It sounds like a thought-provoking discussion. I'm looking forward to diving into those topics with you. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive on acute acquired committant esotropia. We've covered a lot of ground, from the causes and symptoms to diagnosis and all sorts of different treatment options.
Yeah, it has been a fascinating journey, really exploring, all the details of ACE.
It really has. And, we touched on how our digital habits might be playing a role in the rising number of these ACE cases.
Right. And how important it is for all of us to protect our eye health in this digital age. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about the emotional and psychological impact of living with ACE. It's one thing to understand, like, the physical mechanics of the condition,
Right.
but it's a whole other thing to grapple with that, like, sudden change in your vision and appearance.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the medical aspects of it all, but we can't forget the human side of it. Imagine waking up one day and your world is suddenly doubled.
Yeah.
It can be a very frightening and isolating experience.
Like your whole sense of self is like thrown off balance.
Exactly. People with AC, they often struggle with anxiety, fear, and self-consciousness.
Yeah.
They might worry about what other people think, how it affects their work, their relationships, even their ability to drive. It's a lot to process.
It is. I can only imagine. What kind of support can help someone kind of navigate those feelings? Well, open communication with their healthcare provider is a great place to start.
Okay.
Having that safe space to voice their concerns and fears can be really helpful.
Right.
And beyond the medical support, connecting with others who understand what they're going through can be incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
Support groups and online forums can offer a sense of community and shared experience.
It's that sense of, like, I'm not alone in this, which I think can be so powerful in the healing process.
Exactly. And let's not forget the role of loved ones. Patience, understanding, and a listening ear can make a world of difference.
Yeah.
Sometimes just having someone to validate those feelings and say it's okay to feel this way can be incredibly comforting.
Absolutely. It reminds us that healing is, it's holistic. It's not just about fixing that physical problem. It's about addressing the whole person.
Well said.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
We've explored this link between ATE and our digital lifestyles.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it begs a bigger question.
What's that?
What does this tell us about our relationship with technology as a whole?
It's like we are so plugged in these days, and it's so easy to forget that our bodies weren't necessarily designed for this constant interaction with screens.
Precisely. As technology continues to advance, and really just permeate every aspect of our lives, it's crucial that we find ways to, use it mindfully, to strike a balance between reaping its benefits and protecting our health and well-being.
Yeah. It's a reminder that we have a choice. We can shape our relationship with technology rather than letting it shape us.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about being aware of the potential downsides, setting healthy boundaries, and prioritizing, our overall well-being.
Well said. That brings us to the end of our deep dive into acute acquired concomitant esotropia.
It really does.
I hope you found it informative and insightful.
I hope so, too. It's been a pleasure sharing this information with you.
Absolutely. Remember, if you have any concerns about your own eye health or are experiencing any of the symptoms we discussed, please don't hesitate to reach out to a qualified eye care professional. And as always, we encourage you to share this episode with anyone who might find it valuable. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.